Alright, topic number 9 is on midpoints. And to find the midpoint of a line segment, you're trying to find the point that is exactly halfway between both ends. So the midpoint for this white segment, AB, would have to be the point 2, 4, because it breaks the line segment into two pieces, each of them having a length of 3. To find the midpoint of a diagonal segment, sometimes it's as easy as just taking a look at the segment and finding the midway point, the halfway point. To justify that you have the right midpoint, you can use slope. And the slope of this green segment is up 4 over 6. Since I don't want to go from end to end, I only want to go from the end to the middle. What I can do is take those two numbers and take half of each. So instead of going up 4, going up only 2, and then instead of going over 6, going over 3, would give me the location of my midpoint there at negative 2, 1. There is a midpoint formula that goes along with these kind of calculations, and if you're going to apply the formula, it's just the average of the x's becomes the new x coordinate of the midpoint, and then the average of the y's would become the brand new y coordinate. Alright, for a picture like this one here, with this parallelogram, if I wanted to find the midpoint of each of these segments, again, there's a few ways to work them out. One way is to use slope. The slope from A to D is down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I want to find the midpoint, I would go down 2.5 over 2.5 to locate the midpoint. The midpoint would be right where that black point is, and the midpoint of AB or AD would be the coordinates negative 3, comma 5.5. So that's one way to find a midpoint. Another way to find the midpoint would be to use the midpoint formula. So suppose I want to know the midpoint of AB. If I knew the coordinates for A, which would be negative 5, 8, and I knew the coordinates of the other endpoint, B is 2, 9. All I have to apply is the midpoint formula. Average the two x's together. So negative 5 plus 2 divided by 2 tells me that my midpoint would have to have an x coordinate of negative 3 divided by 2, or negative 1.5. To find the midpoint's y coordinate, I just take the y's and average them together. The average of 8 and 9 is 8.5. Or if you didn't trust that and want to just use the formula, it'd be 8 plus 9 divided by 2, which would be 8.5 for my y coordinate. So if I found that point, negative 1.5, positive 8.5, you would see that that midpoint looks right in the picture. Another thing they could ask you involving midpoints would be if they gave you one endpoint, they gave you the midpoint, and they asked you to find the other endpoint. So there's a few different ways you can actually locate the other endpoint. For me, it seems easier just to sketch out what they're telling me. So 7, 1 is where point A is. The midpoint's at 1, 2, 3, positive 2, and I'm asked to find the other endpoint. So basically I know this much of the segment. I have to continue it to figure out where the other end is. And one way to do that is to just quickly look at it in terms of the slope, in terms of looking at the pattern that's being formed. So the slope is negative 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, down 1 over 4. If you complete the pattern backwards with another 1, 2, 3, 4, and up by 1, it would show you where the other endpoint would be. See, the location of B would have to be at negative 1, positive 3. You could always check your answer then too by adding the x's together and dividing by 2, and adding the y's together and dividing by 2. So it would be the correct answer. All right, here's a question right off an old Regents exam. You can try it right now and pause the video, and I will be waiting for you when you unpause it. So here's my solution if you've already had a chance to work on it. So x is 7, y is negative 1. I got another x that's negative 3, and I got another y that's worth 3. I'm looking for the midpoint. You could sketch it out, or you could use the midpoint formula. Add together the x's and divide by 2. Gives me 4 divided by 2, or 2. So 2 is the x coordinate of my midpoint. So it must be choice 2. If I follow through and add together the y's and divide by 2, I would get 2 divided by 2, which is also 1. So choice 2 is the correct choice. All right, for this last question on midpoints, they're asking me to do something with a triangle. They want me to determine the point of intersection of the medians of the triangle. Well, a median forms a midpoint. So medians form midpoints, or medians create midpoints, by joining the side of a triangle with the angle opposite. So if I'm drawing the medians for these three for this triangle, the three medians, I'm going to draw from the angle to the midpoint across the way. And all it takes is a steady hand, maybe a ruler, to draw a nice straight line from the midpoint to the opposite angle. Alright, that is actually pretty easy to do if you knew what the words meant. You need to name the coordinates. The coordinates are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, comma 5, and the question's done. Now, this point is actually called something too. It's called the centroid, and this actually feeds into one of the other topics, which is using the centroid to find measurements on the median. You can measure that part as being 2. Notice that the part that connects the angle to the centroid is always twice as large as the distance from the centroid to the side. And the same applies for these other medians. This length right here is half as big as this length here. And the same goes for the third median too. This is twice the size as from the centroid to the side. Interesting stuff, huh? Well, that's all I have for midpoints. Keep on watching the videos and studying hard.